Welcome to the Sexual Wellness Podcast, real-life conversations with industry experts on modern sexuality and how to live a happy, healthy, turned-on life. I'm your host, Laura Ellen, founder of New Zealand's leading sexual wellness store and holistic sex, love, and life coach, passionately guiding women to expand their pleasure in and outside the bedroom. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Sexual Wellness Podcast. Just a quick reminder that the store, the Lalula store, once called the Lalula store, is now called the Sexual Wellness Store, and you can find it on my website, www.laura-ellen.com, and check out the shop, what's it called? Page, the shop page, where you can find all of the 100% body safe, non-toxic erotica toys and accessories. So today I'm interviewing Michele Casey, who is a sexuality and love luminary. She's also a sex, love, and relationship coach. She is a beautiful, beautiful woman and friend of mine, and it's such an honor to have her on the show because she has some serious wisdom. And today we are deep diving into shame. I have so many clients come to me with old stories about their sexuality and feeling deeply constricted and trapped in this cloak of shame that they've inherited throughout life. And so in this episode, we share about what shame actually is, how we can kind of inherit these old stories, and then Michele offers some really beautiful tools on how we can start to transition and rewrite our sexual stories and start really living the turned on life that we're deeply desiring. So get excited. It's a great episode and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you get out of it. So feel free to send me a DM or comment on the post. Let's enjoy the show. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you.
Welcome to Jungle Paradise.
Actually, though.
Literally Jungle Paradise. So today's a very special episode because it's the second day of spring and the sun is shining, and we've decided to record in my backyard, hence why Jungle Paradise.
Yeah, and it is glorious so far.
Oh my gosh, it's absolutely glorious. We've got tea, we've got pink grapefruit, all from the garden. So this episode today is going to be Michele and I talking about shame is kind of the key word that we've got here.
Yes.
And so we'll see what unfolds from that. And we're also going to be featuring birds, my dog eating sticks, and all sorts of other noises that you might experience. So, yeah. Yeah, quite loud. Thanks, Sid. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I think let's start. I'd really love to hear more about your story because it's a really, really fascinating journey that you've been on. And I think it's really relevant for the topic of this episode. So talk us through where you've come from and your sort of transition into working into sexuality and how that's affected your relationships and, your career and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. So I guess I'd start by just reflecting on how different my life is in this moment than it was 10 years ago, even 4 years ago. So if I take you back to really what my old environment was like, I very, very, very much grew up in this environment of sexuality being something that was very much for behind closed doors and was very much something that was to only be enjoyed or done in really measured doses. So I'm half Samoan, I'm half Swiss, and it was, I really grew up with this feeling of sexuality should be small in a woman, and women who are sexually expressed are not women that are respected, and thus they're not women that are loved. And so I kind of found myself on a very traditional, if you will, path when it came to career, it came to relationships, came to friendships. And I did the whole school thing, went to university, got a couple of degrees, and ended up working in employment law, and then eventually worked in senior human resources as well. And kind of through that time, when I was in my early 20s and late teens, I started pole dancing. So I was actually out with my girlfriends one Saturday night, and we went to this bar called the Champagne Room, which I don't even know if it's there still. It's the bar that's kind of underneath Showgirls, and they have go-go dancers, and they have a whole bunch of poles that you used to be able to play on. And I was just spinning around one of them, and one of the amazing women who were performing there said to me, "You should try pole dancing." And so I was like, fuck yeah, I'm totally going to do that. And the next week I did it. And from there, just blossomed this amazing journey with pole dancing, where I started to really connect with my body, started to really come into ownership of my sexuality in this way that I never had even seen modeled in my life before. And so as that kind of just blossomed, I really started to notice in myself and in the women around me that were all coming to pole dancing that there was a lot of deeper work that needed to be done. I had really reclaimed the sense of expressing myself with bigness, and with like eroticism being a part of that, but it wasn't something that was healing any kind of those like old wounds, that old shame, that old like smallness, and it really wasn't something that was transitioning into my sex life and in my relationships in a significant way. Definitely not in the way in which I wanted it to. So from there, I kind of flowed into my own just exploration of what sexual healing could look like, and I started just by reading everything that I could. One of the first books that I read was Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are, which is just an amazing book. Like, I recommend it. It's my number one recommended book to all of my clients. And I just think everyone in the world should read it. And that just bloomed all of this just hunger for wanting to know more about sexuality. From there, I kind of started a blog and then got into further retraining, decided this is what I wanted to do with my life, and was doing this all whilst moonlighting as the human resources manager for a very large national company, and really living this dual life. And so it was really, like maybe 2 years ago where I really like moved on from this old identity of myself being clouded in shame and smallness, and being really clung to this traditional path, that I kind of stepped into wanting to do this work for myself full time. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because as soon as you start to talk about pole, because I mean, pole dancing obviously is a sport, it's a style of dancing, but instantly, even within myself, and I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but it's as soon as you say pole dancing, I'm just like stripper, like, and all of the stigma that comes with that style of moving your body. So how did you personally move past that in the beginning, or was that even an issue for you? What about when you're telling other people that you pole dance? How did you navigate through that?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to be vulnerable with, because so many people think it and so many people feel that same way. And this, the pole dancing industry has been on its own journey around changing the way in which we relate to the roots of our craft, which absolutely comes from the strip club. So when I started pole dancing, I was super not in my power. I was super ashamed in many ways that I was even doing this. And so I lied. I straight up lied to people about what I was doing. I told my parents that I was doing a circus type class because I knew that they would have reservations about me doing it. And from there, when I did start to tell people, and I'm ashamed to admit this, I absolutely would say things like, yeah, I'm doing this, but I'm not a stripper. Like, it's not like I'm not a pole dancer like that. And at that time, I really didn't realize that what I was doing was a complete disservice and was just exacerbating the sense of shame that we put on people that are working in the sex work industry, people that are living their own best lives of sexual liberation as well. And so, you know, the pole dancing industry very much used to be down with strippers, up with pole dancers, and we've done such incredible growth where now people are like, you know, sex work and stripping is a totally legitimate profession. That is where what we learnt came from and originated out of, and we really need to honor that and respect that and know that that's really why this is ultimately empowering. It's empowering because we're choosing to put ourselves in this like expression. We're choosing to become the very types of women that were, you know, that are criticized so much by society. And that's why this really does have power. That certainly was my experience. And so, yeah, I'm really proud now to really genuinely feel this in myself that, you know, stripping is amazing. Pole dancing is amazing. There's really nothing inherently wrong with those things in and of themselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, why is sex work looked down upon? I mean, again, I'm just going to come out and say it. Like, as soon as I think about girls in the strip club, you know, not necessarily burlesque performers, but like, you know, girls in the strip club, my mind goes to drugs, alcohol, disempowerment, which, let's be real, that is a part of the industry as well. But that's in advertising, that's in many other industries in the world as well, not just in sex work. So why do we look down upon it so much? Is it because of the way that women are objectified in their bodies? And is it going against the sort of sacredness of, what is it? Like, why is it so dirty in a way? The perception of it anyway.
Yeah, totally. Oh, I love that question. And there's just so much to unpack in that. I think that, you know, for me, I think it's really powerful to distinguish between the pornographic and the erotic. So, you know, to me, a lot of my own kind of just journey has been around reclaiming the erotic, and how the pornographic can feel really male gazy. And I think so many women, myself included, have wanted to run really freaking far away from stuff that comes across or is male gazy. And yeah, there are aspects of, the sex industry that do have that shadow, that do have that, unsacredness that you speak to. But that's absolutely not all of it. And in my experience, certainly hasn't been the majority of it either. I think of I have a lot of close friends who are sex workers, and they experience their job like anyone really experiences their job, that some days it's amazing. They get to do work that is really needed. People are starved of human connection. People are starved of being able to fill their needs for sex. And so, there is something really special about being able to facilitate those kinds of experiences for people that do really want them. And then there's days that they have where they don't enjoy that. And I'm by no means a spokesperson for sex work. I've never been a sex worker myself. And so I can only, reflect some of the things that have been so beautifully shared with me. Well, you said something else that I really wanted to touch on, and now it's completely run away from my mind.
Yeah, I guess the perception of it being so dirty.
Yeah, totally. So that's what it was. Yeah. So I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about the word sacred. So in like the space in which we work in, this word of sacred sexuality is always being used. And I, for a long time, really took that word and held it for myself, and it was powerful. It was healing. I got so much from creating sacred sexuality practices, having sacred connections with my partner. And now I'm starting to think about that word a little bit differently. What does that really mean? Is in some ways this idea of sacredness creates this hierarchy, or this new hierarchy where, can there just be room for all types of sexual expression? What if all of it was okay? I really, I love to not bust down hierarchies to create new hierarchies, which I think I see a lot of the time in our industry as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've just been writing from that. I really like that because it can seem a little bit sacred sexuality. It seems a bit elitist in a way. Mm-hmm. And I was just jotting down as you were saying that intentional sexuality that has awareness, and your decisions are reflections of your core values that are grounded in self-love and integrity within yourself. And that expression can be, whatever, and it will be uniquely different to every single woman. Mm-hmm. And so maybe you're right. It's just a matter of changing the language around it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think intentional sexuality is really powerful, and that I think that gives so much more space for individuality and authenticity. Love.
Absolutely. I mean, even when I first started going on this journey, I shared in another podcast about how I had this year of celibacy, and I was, deep into this meditative white tantric life. And, I was pure. I was practically a floating angel in the sky. I hadn't drunk alcohol for a year. I was sugar free. I was just floating. And yeah, that word sacred and pureness, it was it was beautiful, and I felt good, but it was limiting because I didn't have access to this wild, dark feminine energy that wanted to be expressed as well. I had so many different expressions of who I was and my sexuality and my being, and it just being this kind of sacred angel.
Yeah.
I, in the end, felt wasn't true either, because it didn't allow me the space to be seen in all of my expressions.
Yeah, absolutely. I so feel that, and it just makes me reflect that true liberation, true sexual liberation, is really about having the power to choose, whatever that looks like for you. And I think we all need to recognize that it looks different for everyone. There are, there's not one right way to do any of this. But when it's coming from a place of consciousness and deliberateness and intentionality, whatever that flavor is for you, then amazing. Do you? But, alongside that, we have to be able to do the work in ourselves to not create judgments on other people's expressions, which gives us then permission to be free in whatever flavor we want our sexuality and our personal expression to look like too.
Totally. Judgment is such a sneaky little devil way for your mind to sort of keep you stuck in your own story. And I also jotted down before jealousy, desire, and judgment. And I wonder, I haven't thought about this much, but I wonder if a lot of this stigma and kind of snobbery towards sex workers is because of this jealousy and judgment, when really we're all kind of, not all of us, but, a lot of us in the mainstream are walking around feeling really shut down, really not in our sexual power at all. And so we kind of snark at these people who are really engaged with it and feeling free and liberated, yet deep down we're actually deeply, deeply desiring that. I remember when I first started going to ecstatic dancing, and the first time that I went, I didn't even move my body. I sat on the outskirts and I looked at everyone and I said, what a bunch of weirdos. Like, who are these people? Just like judging them and like feeling uncomfortable and wanting to leave, overwhelmed and very, very judgmental. Like, who are these people? What are they doing? Like, ooh, that's so gross. But deep down, honest to God, I was desperately dying, like screaming to get on that dance floor. Like, my whole body was aching to be in that space and to like experience that level of freedom and ecstasy that they all seem to be having.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that is a similar sort of thing when it comes to a mainstream, like generalized perspective on, you know, sex work and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So maybe next time we find ourselves clenching up and pushing our sort of judgments onto other people because of how they live, it's an opportunity to run a little self-inquiry about, ooh, how am I not expressed in that way? Or like, what is it about me that I'm longing for or needing that they're reflecting back to me?
Yeah, I love that. And I have, you know, that visual of you know, up against the wall in ecstatic dance is just so familiar because I have found myself in that situation at every evolution of my life. And yeah, even in dance myself, I started like really moving when I started pole dancing. And I remember coming up against the same things of feeling like, oh, I really want to feel that free. I want to be able to take up space in that same way. But how at the same time my body was so constricted by the sense of judgment, but also the sense of it's not safe to do that. This really palpable feeling of unsafety in my body. But, you know, I think to loop that back around to the conversation we're having about the sex work industry is, you know, we all recognize that sexuality is very much still in the shadow socially. And so, you know, it makes perfect sense that even if we're in the sex industry ourselves in the way in which we are, there is still judgments that we have of people that are even more deeply in that kind of, in that space, because those judgments, that social conditioning just goes so deep. And so that invitation to do that self-inquiry, to hold up that mirror and just see what wisdom, what learning you can take out of those judgments, I think is so freeing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's freeing. Yeah. And that's the thing with judgment and shame, is that it only keeps you small. Like,
yes,
it only keeps you stuck, and it's uncomfortable to break through. But when you do, it's freedom.
Yes.
So I'd actually love to know, I want to dive more into like really understanding what shame is and what it's about. So could you explain to me what your definition of shame is?
Oh, great question. So what really comes up for me is less like a word definition and is more a like felt sense definition. So shame is very much a feeling to me. And I work a lot in my work with the somatic layer and the way in which we experience these contractions and these emotions in our body. And so, you know, for me, if I drop into what shame feels like, it feels like this contraction around my heart. It feels like this kind of heaviness in my chest that really like wants my shoulders to hunch forward and feels a bit nauseous through my throat. And so a lot of people will feel shame in a similar way to that, or in a completely different way. There's really no one right way to experience shame. Yeah, but that's really the way in which that I personally like to see and like define shame.
I love that. I love how you've brought it into the body as well. Super important. And because we're not taught at school when we're growing up how to like tune in with those emotions and feel them, It's so easy to just go, ooh, I'm feeling constricted. Ouch. Gross. Yuck. Shut down. Push away. Suppress.
Yes.
So how can we then lean into this emotion and start to move through it?
Yeah, totally. So if we talk about like sex and shame, to just wrap some really clear examples around this as we journey through this, the way that I love to work with just integrating and releasing shame is to really, one, understand how it shows up in your body, two, understand how this shame is turning into a judgment that you have of yourself or other people, or is like this belief or this story that you have around yourself, around sex. The reason I love to do that is because when we can really identify those things, understand how it shows up, how we're experiencing it in the mind, in the body, we can start to understand like where we actually learnt those things. And so I think what's really powerful to know is that when we're talking about shame, and the beliefs that exist around shame, we didn't just make these up. We learnt them somewhere. And that always feels like a bit of like a to me, because I remind myself and I remind my clients that, you know, it's not like we're just weak and we're just small and we are this way. Like we actually learnt this from somewhere. And so the way in which we learn these things is through like the culture that we are existing around. It's through what society tells us about sex, around our bodies, around our womanhood, around all of these things. It's around what we inherited from our parents or our caregivers. And so I think, you know, I really think, well, actually, like, I love to also remember that all of these things ultimately are just there to try and keep us safe so that we, you know, also belong, because we think that by having this shame, it's going to make us conform and thus we're more likely to be loved. So, you know, shame has a very noble mission in some ways, even though it's really pesky and most of the time we just want it to, like, you know, get the heck out of here. But really, like, shame is just a protective mechanism. It's just trying to make you more likely to receive love, safety, and belonging in your life. And in many ways, it works. I think of how my shame and what, you know, how that influenced my actions absolutely kept me in the sense of belonging, absolutely made my parents love me in many ways, absolutely made me feel safe, whilst at the same time, it also kind of felt deeply unsafe and made me feel really constricted. You know, all of those things can exist at once.
Yeah, so I like that perspective. So now if we experience this sense of shame, we can go, thank you for coming, and opening to it with a sense of gratitude, because it's only here to show you something about yourself that you can now start to let go of or move past. And I also like what you say about shame actually serving us for a sense of belonging too, which is so true, because, you know, to just say I'm just going to break down all of these shame barriers overnight in 30 seconds and walk out the door tomorrow morning as this new person, that's going to have a significant effect on your entire life, all of your relationships. And so by practicing compassion and giving yourself time to sort of like go through these things, you're talking about your parents a lot in this, and I imagine that has been a slow, like a journey to sort of work through this with them. Yeah, I also love what you're saying about having our sexual stories, and I'd love to dive into that particular aspect a little bit more, because, you know, I also have a lot of clients coming to me about, you know, I feel ashamed to want sex or even want to speak up for my pleasure because of various, you know, just the various pieces that they have around feeling shameful for desiring sex and for desiring to be sexual women. So let's hone into the story piece and how we can start to recreate our own stories.
Yeah, I love that. And the shame piece is so real. And, something I wanted to I totally want to go there, but something I really want to touch on as well is just to expand on what you were talking about around gratitude for these pieces of us. And something I also really wanted people listening to be able to feel is how it can be really hard to get straight to gratitude, and how, when we feel that, say, shame in our bodies, when we feel judgment in our bodies, instead of going straight to gratitude, if that feels inaccessible, can we allow ourselves firstly just to see them? Can we allow ourselves to say, okay, shame, I understand where you've come from. I understand that this is some deep conditioning that I inherited from, my parents, from, my friends. I see you, and I really love to let the first step be acceptance. So, all right, I accept you. I am saying yes to you. I'm just going to allow you to take up this space, because ultimately these pieces of us just really want to be seen. And so if you can't get to gratitude straight away, all good. Gratitude is, it's a journey, but can you get to acceptance? Can you get to a place of letting it take up space? Which is a beautiful thing to flow into for what we were talking about around our sexual stories. And so, this kind of, is a bit of an evolution from what we were just talking to. So if I talk first about what I used to carry as my sexual story, I very much had the story that to be a successful, respected, and I don't know if this is a word, marriageable woman, I had to, dress in a certain way. So, showing too much of my body would take away from those things. It would take away from the way in which people would perceive me, and thus I would be less worthy of love, and thus no man would ever desire me. I really had this story that I had to give 10 times before I could even allow myself to receive a tiny bit. And that applied to all of my life, but absolutely applied to sexuality. It really flowed into this idea of, well, my sexuality is more for them than it is for me. My body is more for them than it is for me. My sexuality is almost this tool to get greater love, to feel like I was desirable, but actually there was a real disconnection from what actually felt pleasurable for me. And so I love to, and this might be something that people listening want to do, is just write down what is the current sexual story you have for yourself, and how is this showing up in your life? So the way my old story used to show up in my life was I would say yes to everything. I would always, even if something was painful for me sexually, I'd just be like, oh, my partner wants to have sex, and so I'm just going to have sex. I would always say just yes. It would show up with me never really asking for what I wanted and needed in bed. It showed up with me actually judging a lot of women that I would see having this sense of expressed wildness, having this sense of expressed bigness and sexuality and sensuality, because, I had this story that it was unrespectable to be living that way, that then informed the way in which I viewed the world around me. Yeah.
Epic. Okay, and so let's talk about how to sort of transform that piece. Mm-hmm. And so there's the literal writing down what your story is, and then how do we start to maybe just a couple of tools to start rewiring that story and stepping into something that feels way more aligned. We could talk about that forever, I think. Yeah.
Yes, preach. Absolutely, we could. Yeah, I love that. And so, the way that, or one of the ways that you can really start to shift that. So here's what I would say. If you've written down your story, you really have an understanding of how this story is manifesting itself in your life. The next step is, how do you feel that story in your body? So coming into like an inwards connection in your body, how does this show itself in my body? Where am I feeling it? Can I create some space to accept this? Can I just let this be here? And this step will often feel counterintuitive, because quite often we can have this desire to get this, just cut the story and push it away. But all that does is create greater disconnection, because the story is a part of you. The story represents so much from your formative years. It represents, just so much in your life. But it doesn't mean that you have to choose that story every single time. So how do I experience this story? Can I just accept that this has been how I've been living my life, and just noticing what that might feel like, what that might look like? From there, what I love to invite people into is, what do you want your new story to look like? How do you want to express yourself as, as a person in your sexuality? And also a step I love to add on to that is, how do you want to feel? So what might be 2 or 3 kind of high vibe emotions that you want to feel with that story? So for example, with me, emotions that I really wanted to feel, and in fact I keep these as my North Star, because this work is, until our dying breath, is like confidence and bigness and joy. Those were 3 words that have really hung around for me in my own journey of sexual liberation. So something you can do from there is, you have this new story. What do you want this to look like? This is how I want to feel. It's these 2 or 3 high vibration emotions. Then from there, you can do a little meditation with that, and even take it into self-pleasure. So that can be with sensual touch, that can be with like actual, sexual touch as well. And the way you can do that is by turning on your body, really connecting, coming into your body. You can use oil, you can use toys, you can use whatever you want. And feeling, where do I feel this sense of confidence in my body? Is there a place that I feel confidence in my body? Is there a place that I feel joy in my body? Is there a place that I feel bigness in my body? And kind of just rolling through each of those high vibration emotions, seeing if you can feel those emotions whilst you mix them with self-pleasure or sensual touch. And what you're doing there is, you're kind of just rewiring these 2 things. So you're mixing this high vibration emotion with the actual act of self-pleasure. And that does amazing, amazing things to your brain. The last thing I would add on there is, a lot of the time when you start this, you won't be able to completely connect with where you feel bigness or confidence or joy or love or whatever it is that you want to feel. You won't necessarily be able to feel that right away, and that is so fine. This stuff takes time. It is not a fast food kind of journey. It is not a one and done. It is a practice. We use the word practice in this work all the time, because it really, really is a practice. So just know that holding that invitation for yourself is enough. It is the work. And if you ever need, you want some support around that, there's amazing people like me and Laura that can really guide you through that and keep you fiercely accountable in that as well.
Yeah, that was really beautiful. I love that, especially as, even going back to my year of living the pure life in celibacy, at the time that was what I needed, especially in the beginning. And I was following my bliss. I was following what I needed, which was a break. That's what was bringing me confidence and like a sense of really deep self-love and respect for myself. And then it changed, and that's okay. So, just bear in mind that it doesn't always look like one thing, and we evolve and we grow and our needs change. And it's a practice, like you say, to be constantly tuning in and figuring out what we need, and then taking the inspired action to actually infuse our lives with the things that make us feel confident, joy. And what was the other one?
Bigness.
Bigness. Oh, I like that one. Damn.
Yeah.
So I feel like the last thing that I want to touch on in this is experiencing shame from other people. So slut shaming is sort of the first thing that comes to mind. I mean, even when we're parents and having our parents and sort of adult influences in our lives shut us down for being sexually whatever. And then again, like socially, how we act and how we present ourselves, we can experience a lot of shame from others. So I'd love to unpack that a little bit. So are they just reflecting a part of us that we actually still feel ashamed ourselves? And so I guess that's a part of it. And then also it's like everyone has their own story and their own insecurities. And how can we protect ourselves from projection from others and stay in our own lane, stand in our truth, and not take on, other people's stuff?
Yes. Oh, I just want to validate how real it is that people shame you for this. I'll be honest, that's absolutely something I experience on a regular basis in my life. But interestingly, I experience it a lot less than I thought I would, given, my content, given the work that I'm doing. And I love what you're saying about staying in your lane. That's like a personal mantra I use so often, and it has so many applications. The first thing that really comes up for me around this is boundaries. So I think it's Adrienne Marie Brown. She says that your no makes way for your yes. And I find this so deeply inspiring and so, so true. Is how can we empower our no, which not only is deeply powerful when we're having sex, when we're dating, when we're in relationships, but is really powerful just in life in general, is having like fierce boundaries whilst also being able to maintain like an open and vulnerable heart as well. I love that visual for myself, and it's something I'm always initiating my clients into, is this idea of having fierce boundaries but being able to maintain an open and vulnerable heart. And so, where having boundaries can look like many different things. It can look like choosing who you want to put yourself around. It can look like, just saying to people, I actually don't want to hear your unsolicited advice right now. Thank you for caring. This conversation tells me that this is important to you, but I don't have to listen to this. So, can you just put that judgment or that opinion in your pocket? So boundary work is really, really powerful. And something I love to actually do is practice saying no in the mirror. This is something I do in heaps of my live workshops, is getting women to actually really feel their feet on the ground and practice speaking their no. And it's amazing to do that in the mirror. And quite often will bring up the sense of, it feels so foreign and uncomfortable to speak my no. The other thing that comes up for me is like, who are you in community with? And so, we can't always have everyone around us agree with absolutely everything we believe or say or want in our lives. And that is so fine. It's normal. It's human. We don't need that to happen to be able to, live our best lives and live our most expressed lives either. But it can be so nourishing and such a needed reminder to put yourself in communities where people really do get it. They really do get you. They are genuinely supportive of this work that you're doing for yourself. And then the last thing that pops up for me is really what you were talking to is in the same way that we can acknowledge where our own shame comes from, can we do the same for others? So when we see that whatever we're doing is triggering someone, can we say, you know, where is this shame coming from? Why are they projecting it onto me? And just having that greater understanding whilst not having to fix them. We don't want to be in the business of trying to fix everyone around us. Everyone's entitled to live in whatever way they want to, and that's completely okay. But can we just say, okay, this is the reason that they feel this way, but is it my truth? Do I choose to pick this up and take it on and carry this myself? Or can I just hear them and kind of put that back down? Which to me is a really powerful way to practice boundaries as well.
I like that because you're sort of still being able to be present and listen and hear someone and be with them and practice that vulnerable, open heart, but still understanding that you can put it back down, quote unquote, what she said. And I like that. I look at it like going dress shopping, and I do this so many times in my life. It's like, it's always nice to try on a dress, see how it fits, see how it walks away, but know that you can always put it back on the rack. You know, you don't have to buy it ever. You can, you know, sometimes you look at it and it's nice to look at it in the mirror and see it and try it on and then know that you can just put it away.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think when we can give ourselves that permission, life really, really changes. But we have to, you know, I think we were talking about this before we started recording. We have to, you know, to really be able to do that in a way where you're making aligned, conscious choices in your life, you have to be first willing to really listen to your own inner guides, your own inner wisdom, so that you actually have that compass to understand, well, what is true for me? What do I actually want to pick up and wear and totally rock in my life? You know, or what is just a projection? What am I choosing out of fear? What am I choosing out of, you know, just wanting to conform or whatever it is. And we will never get it right. There's things, I've been doing this work for a long time now. I am so deep in my practice. I'm so committed to my growth, and I am finding blind spots so often. Like, it's just such a real thing. So just knowing that perfection isn't possible. It's just no point in even getting attached to that, and seeing how much pleasure you can bring to the journey, which is why doing this from a place of sexuality is just so rad.
Amen, sister. Yeah, amen. Honestly, like it's never finished. Progress, not perfection, and just enjoying the ride. Yeah, at the moment I'm actually creating a post about like the top 5 books for, you know, living a turned on life.
Yeah.
And it's like Calvin Hobbes, Mills and Boone novels, like, you know, like, and of course there's some other ones in there that are like a bit more practical, but just have a laugh. Like, don't take all this stuff too seriously. It's really about, that's what living a turned on life is having a good time and not getting sucked into the work too much, because it can get quite addictive. Yeah. Oh, this has been so good. I've got a couple of quick fire questions just to wrap up. So the first one is, how do you cultivate more pleasure in your life?
Oh, beautiful question. And I'm getting a flurry of ideas coming to me. So the first thing that I love to do is just writing a pleasure list. So I do journal prompts every single morning as part of my morning ritual. And one of the questions is, how can I choose pleasure today? And I really need this because I know how easy it is to stray away from pleasure in my life and to just get into the, you know, productivity mindset when, you know, pleasure is so vital to the actual life experience that I want to have, and actually, interestingly, makes me so much more effective and productive anyway. So it's a total win-win. So, you know, one way is to just have it as a ritual, have a consistent reminder. How can I choose pleasure today? And you might even like to expand on that by writing a pleasure list. So what are all of the things in your life that bring you or can bring you pleasure? For me, some of the things on my list is massage. I'm a massage junkie. Me and my partner even have a timer in our bedroom that we turn and like give each other 5 minutes of massage, and then we swap and we just go until we don't want to massage anymore. My tea is an amazing pleasure-filled thing. Eating good food is so pleasurable to me. Doing my conscious sexuality practices is so pleasurable. Eating chocolate, putting on my red lipstick, building my ever expanding collection of earrings is super pleasurable to me. So yeah, and allowing yourself the small pleasures as well as the big pleasures. Pleasure doesn't have to cost money. That's why it's so amazing and so liberating, is that, some of the best pleasures are the ones that cost nothing, are the ones that are super, super small. That wasn't that quick fire, was it?
You nailed it. I'm all about everything that you just said. So you actually touched on this earlier, but what is the most impactful book that you've ever read? You've already shared that one, so maybe it's an opportunity for you to share another one.
Yeah, totally. So my first one was Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. It's amazing. It's super science-based. It's super pragmatic. Highly recommend. Also, one of the other ones that I love that really came to me at such a turning point in my life is a book called Sex at Dawn. I've forgotten who writes it. I think it's Christopher something and someone else. It's an amazing book that really goes into the history of patriarchy, the history of monogamy, the history of just why sexuality culturally is the way that it is. And it doesn't, force any shoulds or shouldn'ts into your mind whatsoever. It just kind of goes through why things look the way they do. And having that understanding is so powerful, particularly in the context of everything we've been talking about today around where did we learn these things? How have they become a part of my sexual story? So I really highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah, awesome. I think it is really important to have these really deep understandings of where these shame stories can come from, especially when we are engaging in relationships and understanding how to sort of relate to another person from a place of liberation and freedom, as opposed to a social construct that we think we should be doing. Yeah, awesome. So the last question is, what's one thing you've learned about self-love recently?
I love this question. It's very timely for me, actually. I went on to a bit of an anti-self-love just vibe for a while, because self-love was becoming so capitalized and really bite-sized, and I was getting really t-shirts and drink bottles that talk about self-love, that just feels like such a cheapening of the actual practice of self-love. But I've really returned to this falling in love with self-love again. I think one of the things I've been reflecting on a lot lately is that really for me, when I can't access self-love, love in that particular flavor, I love to think about connection, so self-connection. And sometimes that feels like a much easier step for me on those days that are really, really tough. So if I can't love this part of my body, which for me is often my lower belly, if I can't love the shit out of my lower belly today, can I just take some time for connection? Can I just place my hand there and let my belly take up space in my body? Can I let her have a home in my body? Can I just breathe with her? And that has really given me so much permission in my own self-love practice. Yeah.
Beautiful. It's that acceptance piece as well.
Yeah,
yum. Love that. Thank you so much. This is just heaven.
I agree.
I want to record all of my episodes in Jungle Paradise. It's just been so delightful, and the sun and the tea and you and everything we've spoken about, hugely valuable, and I'm deeply grateful for you coming and sharing your wisdom on the show. So thank you.
My absolute pleasure. It's been so awesome to just hang out with you and really like meet properly for the first time and have an amazing conversation and just raise the vibe together and lift the amazing sensual woman up. Woohoo!
Yeah, I've been secretly like fangirling Michelle for a long time. So if you don't follow her on social media, then get involved, and all of the links will be in the show notes. But do you want to share how the listeners can find you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always love hearing from people who are hungry for this work and might resonate with me as a guide. So some of the ways that you can connect with me and read some of my offerings is on all of the social medias, basically. So on Instagram, my handle is _Michele Casey _ and Casey is spelt with a K, not a C. And I'm also on Facebook. You can just friend me. I love being friends with people instead of having a page. That's kind of my vibe at the moment. And then there's heaps of amazing info on my website, as well as a whole bunch of blog pieces that have heaps of cool tools that can just deepen this exploration for yourself. So I hope to connect with you guys soon.
Yeah, awesome. And everything will be linked in show notes and all of the things. All of the things. Yay. Thanks. Thanks, girl.
Thanks, sister.
Yeah. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like and subscribe or share it with someone who you feel could benefit from hearing it too. My mission is to bring healthy sexuality to the mainstream, so be sure to leave your 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, because that way this content can land in the ears of those who need it the most. If you're looking for more resources on how to live a turned-on life, check out my website at www.laura-allen.com, where you'll find events, coursework, free downloadable workbooks, as well as my coaching packages. And lastly, I want to thank you for taking the time to prioritize yourself in this exquisite way, because when we do, that's when we can really start to show up for the rest of the world. And until next time, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another episode soon.